Chapter 321. Diana went up. Goodbye. Those faces that had gone pale before her were now flushed with life. Diana felt as if she were dreaming. Tears threatened to come, and she told herself she wouldn't cry anymore. She had already cried like a frightened child today. But her body betrayed her. She ran forward, sobbing, and flung herself into her mother's and aunt's arms. Hippolyta's eyes were filled with sorrow. She clutched Diana, crying, "My daughter," as tightly as if she would never let go. Antiope gently patted Diana's trembling back and murmured, "I am proud of you," the steel of the general gone from her voice for the first time. Diana touched her mother's face and then cupped Antiope's head, looking at them as if she wanted to memorize every line. The images of loss still haunted her, the faces of those she had seen die. No matter how often others warned you of what you had, you only truly understood its value once it was gone. Diana had grown up in the instant everyone had died. The price of that growth had been unbearable. Now, thanks to Leon, she had been given a second chance. She clung to her mother for a long time, and when she finally let go, she studied every face around her, committing them to memory. Then she turned. At the cliff edge, the man in casual clothes, his shirt rippling in the sea breeze, stood watching. Everyone followed her gaze and glared at him. Look what he had done. He had saved Antiope, the queen, everyone. He had helped awaken Diana's divine power and defeat Ares. He was the island's savior. But he was also the man who had made their princess kneel and weep, the Amazon's fury united, who would coax a girl's powers into bloom by forcing her to watch her family die. Even if he was devastatingly handsome, that could not undo the pain he had caused. Unless he stayed and became the Amazon's consort. Diana stared at Leon. The wind bent the tall grass between them. They looked at each other across the swaying blades. A messy, tear-streaked smile bloomed on Diana's face. She didn't know how to name the tangle of feelings inside her, the strange thrill of meeting a man for the first time in her long life, the pleasant impression his looks had left, the gratitude for being pulled back from the edge after the illusion of everyone dying. Emotions knotted in her chest like a ball of yarn. She realized that this man, hair lifted by the breeze, suddenly appearing in her life and in her thoughts without so much as a greeting, would be impossible to forget. She ran, walking, then jogging, then breaking into a sprint. She flew across the grass and crashed into his arms. Leon spun her once, holding her close. If she had been wearing a long dress, its hem would have fanned out, the most beautiful sight on Paradise Island. "Thank you for saving Mother and Leon. Thank you." Diana buried her face against his chest and spoke with earnest gratitude. Leon glanced down. The scent of crushed grass and the salt air clung to her. "Are you sure you want to thank me?" he asked. "What you just saw was an illusion I made for you." Diana looked up in surprise. "An illusion? You even fooled Ares." "Is that all you wanted to say?" Leon teased. Diana, so honest and direct, made him grin. "Then what should I say? Like calling me a bad guy? But you saved everyone, Leon." She looked at him as if seeing him anew. Her eyes were like sunlight on a still lake, clear and bright. Her hands rested on his broad shoulders. On an impulse, she rose onto her tiptoes. Diana did not fully understand the differences between men and women, but she followed the feeling in her heart and found his lips. Leon could have moved away. His reflexes were faster than anyone's, but in that moment, he did nothing. How could he resist a girl like Diana? Things were moving fast, but Tony had once advised him, when dealing with girls, be bold. So they kissed there at the cliff's edge, their silhouettes merging in the sun. Wow! The Amazon women gasped, covering their mouths, their faces flushing at the sight. Antiope hid a smile behind her hand. Hippolyta opened her mouth as if to scold, then closed it. Watching them, she saw a younger version of herself with Zeus, so pure, so foolish, and a sigh escaped her. She only hoped that Leon would not be like Zeus, loving at first, then forgetful. After a long moment, they parted. Diana's cheeks were flushed. Her eyes glistened with an emotion so full it seemed to drip like water. I feel really good. Is it because of you?" "I think so," Leon said. "In human society, people in love do things like this. It feels comfortable." "Love?" Diana asked slowly. "Does that mean Mother made me from clay and Zeus gave me life?" "Maybe something like that," Leon answered, thinking wryly to himself that in his world most people were rescued from dumpsters. Again! Diana immediately put her hands back on his shoulders. Okay. Oh no, wait, Diana. Leon stopped her, suddenly aware of another sound. Tony was stirring. The old man was about to wake. Leon had been keeping an eye on him, no other reason. He worried Tony would wake on an island of beautiful women and never want to go back to Pepper. History tended to repeat itself. What's the matter? Diana asked, puzzled. Leon steadied her by the arm. I have to go, Diana. You're leaving? Where are you going? Diana's expression tightened. I'll go with you. You know I'm from another world. I'm here looking for Superman, Leon explained. That Superman won't reach Earth for decades, so I have to go to the future of your world. If you leave with me, you'll be taking decades of your life from this world, he said gently, gesturing toward Hippolyta and the others. After what we just went through, are you sure you want to be separated from the Queen and the others for so long? Diana looked at her mother. After the illusion, after that terrible experience, what she wanted most was to stay with her people on Paradise Island. The thought of being gone for decades hurt. She bit her lip and looked at Leon. Then when you get to the future, will you come back for me? Of course I will. Leon nodded. He understood the choice that lay before her. In the future, I'll come back to Paradise Island. I'll find you, and I'll show you the human world outside. Diana hesitated, glancing between her mother and Leon. At last she nodded, lips pressed tight. I'll wait for you on Paradise Island. She rose on tiptoe one more time and left a small bite mark on his lip before they parted. Leon departed the island in the Mark armor. Though his back was soon out of sight, Diana remained at the cliff, watching. Her entire life until now had been bounded by Paradise Island. Her greatest dream had been to defeat Ares. With Ares gone, her whole world had shrunk to this place. In that small world, a scoundrel like Leon had stumbled in and left his mark, and she knew she would never forget him. Diana, did that man just leave? You didn't stop him? Hippolyta came up to her daughter, surprise written on her face. Could her daughter be so strong-willed, bold, then sending him away? That was braver than she'd expected. Diana lowered her gaze and shook her head. Let's go back, Mother. Will you tell me more about Zeus? Chapter 322, A Timely Encounter. Leon climbed to 100,000 feet in the Mark armor. Young Master, shall we begin jumping time points now? Jarvis finally spoke after having been silent since they arrived at Paradise Island. Judging by Mr. Stark's brainwave activity, he's dreaming and less than 5 minutes from waking. There's no need to wait. He'll likely pass out again after we jump. Leon didn't intend to give Tony a chance to wake. He still didn't depart immediately. While on Paradise Island, he'd learned enough about this world to want to listen a little longer, so he activated super hearing. In this DCEU, most of the original gods on Earth were gone or dead. Only Diana and Ares remained among them. Other superpowers were rare, and Atlantis was the only power with any real organization. Given that background, Leon figured the trajectories of World War I and II here wouldn't deviate hugely from what he remembered. But the details mattered. This Eastern power wasn't the same as the one from his previous life, and he could already foresee how tragic the coming decades would be. He felt compelled to act. Jarvis, wait here a few minutes, Leon said, then vanished into the clouds. Moments later, he reappeared over East Asia. Superhearing fed him the unrest across the continent and the growing militarism in the island nation to the east. The eastern great country of this world isn't the same as where I came from, he muttered, but since I'm here and the timing is right, I'll lend a hand. He pulled the Supermark I he'd earlier fabricated from his inner world, opened the suit's electronic panel, and quickly reprogrammed a smart program. He integrated systematic technology, including elements of the Supermark I armor, into the device. When he was done, he opened a small portal and sent the armor to a young man who was sound asleep on the other side. It was 1916. Many were still young then, but their paths were already shaping. Satisfied, Leon closed the portal and flew over the island nation. Decades from now, a fat man and a little boy will fall here, he said to himself. They'll put an end to the rampant militarism in this region. If it's going to happen anyway, I might as well take this chance to make it less cruel. He clenched his fist. There were 2 blasts back then. I'm only delivering 1 punch now. They're getting off light. Listening to the plans of invasion echoing in his ears, he launched a restrained blow at the land below. To limit collateral damage to the surrounding seas, he deployed a biofield around the area before he struck. What he meant to be a measured punch unleashed an almost unimaginable pressure between heaven and earth. The air itself fractured, the island's land tore open. The long, narrow island of Honshu split from end to end. The continental shelf broke apart, underground magma surged and seawater poured in. Outside the biofield, the seas remained calm, but within its boundary, doomsday had come. A wall of water hundreds of meters high blotted out the sky. Tens of millions of tons of seawater crashed toward the Edo region like an unstoppable, terrible Great Wall. The Taisho Imperial Palace was flattened. People cried out to the emperor and prostrated themselves, appealing to Amaterasu Okami, only to be swept away and obliterated by the onslaught. Other parts of Honshu fared much worse. The island's spine split for thousands of miles, deeper than the East African Rift. Roads collapsed into fissures. Unlucky people were swallowed by the erupting magma. When seawater flooded the cracks, the cooling magma and unburnt remains fused and were buried forever. Whales rose across the land. This nation, which had been on a path toward aggressive expansion, met a sudden, deserved end. The force Leon unleashed didn't merely shatter cities, it broke the very skeleton of the land. The continental shelf fractured, the island chain began to sink. Tsunamis repeatedly pounded what remained, and in a matter of minutes, the long island was gone beneath the waves. Down below, submarine magma continued to erupt through the fractured crust, spouting columns of lava that breached the surface. If Leon hadn't enclosed the area in his biofield, the crustal upheaval would have caused catastrophic effects across the East Asian mainland. But he had isolated the disaster. The destruction and despair were confined to the island nation. Once Honshu had sunk, Leon switched to micromanagement. He triggered a major magma eruption and then used his freezing breath to cool and solidify the flow rapidly, forming new land. Minutes later, a new, barren island chain rose where the old one had been. Apart from its desolation, it closely resembled the old geography. The other three main islands had been scoured by tsunami, their lands smashed and shelves collapsed, but they hadn't suffered the same level of tectonic destruction. Leon surveyed the cleaned, reshaped island chain and felt satisfied. In a few years, the region would be habitable again, and an eastern great power, one that developed with a little help from his technology, could use the new archipelago as a forward base. When he was done with the final adjustments, Leon returned to Jarvis's side. The island nation catastrophe had begun and ended in minutes. To everyone else in the world, nothing had happened. "My business is finished. Let's go, Jarvis." He rested his hand on the Mark Armor's shoulder and prepared to jump again. Once Leon traversed a world, that world's timeline became fixed in his traversal ability. The next time he entered, he could skip searching and jump directly to a future point, but only by using another world as a springboard. He and Tony first returned to the Superman and Lois world, then used the traversal skill to home in on the DCEU timeline. Images flashed. 10 years, 20 years, 30. Leon locked on to the moment he remembered best, the arrival of Kryptonian General Zod on Earth. If he could help take Zod down, Superman might be willing to lend him the Life Codex for a time. "Then let's go fight Zod." "Hold on tight, Tony." Leon activated traversal again and returned to the DCEU. Tony, who had been on the verge of waking, slipped back into unconsciousness. Chapter 23. A completely different Flash. Traveling inside the same Omni-universe was always easier. It took far less energy, and the journey felt as short as stepping across a room. Even when Lion crossed the void between different universes, he could keep his eyes open and enjoy the scenery. This jump was unusually precise. When he entered the DCEU, he and Tony arrived in the middle of a coffee shop. No one in the shop noticed that a man in a suit of armor had just appeared among them. Dozens of customers were staring at the television above the counter. The screen flickered with static, then resolved into a blurry outline. "Earthling, you may call me General Zod. I come from a planet very far from you. Some of you are harboring one of my compatriots, and I demand that you hand over." General Zod's face filled the screen. He had seized every electronic broadcast in the world and was giving a global ultimatum: hand over Superman. Lion watched and thought, this is perfect timing. Zod would force Clark out, extract the life codex from Superman's body, and begin terraforming Earth. Lion rotated his wrist, ready to find an opening and make Clark owe him a favor. Then, Zod's broadcast shifted. Kara Zor-El, listen up. You have 24 hours to surrender. If you do not, you will see this planet suffer because of you. The display devices in the coffee shop all went black. A beat of stunned silence, then screams, curses, and frantic discussion. The room became a pot of boiling chaos. Lion's mind scrambled. He'd been planning how to meet Clark. Why was Zod addressing Kara? He realized, with a slow mental click, that he had landed in the wrong DCEU. This was the rebooted Flash universe. Lion released the suppression on his super senses. Information poured in from across the globe. On the Black Sea, Diana lay on the grass of Paradise Island, sunning herself and grumbling that Lion hadn't shown up yet. In Central City, Barry Allen, the Flash, was clutching his head and shouting, "It's over!" There was no talk of Cyborg, Superman, or Aquaman. In this timeline, Clark Kent had never come to Earth. Kara had. Lion rubbed his chin. "So I was wrong from the start," he muttered. "Doesn't matter. I can still get the life codex here." He replayed the known beat of the Flash timeline in his head. In Barry's original memory, his mother was murdered when he was a child. His father had gone out to the supermarket to buy ketchup, and because he had no alibi and happened to be near the time of the murder, he was convicted. Young Barry tried to restore the damaged supermarket footage to clear his father, but the father's head was bowed in the video. His face never appeared, so the footage couldn't be used. Desperate, Barry used the Speed Force to travel back and add ketchup to his mother's cart so his father wouldn't need to go out. When he returned to the present, he discovered he had created a brand new timeline. In that reality, another Barry lived happily with his parents, and there were no superheroes, no Wonder Woman, no Superman. Kara had come to Earth, but had been imprisoned in Siberia for more than a decade. The only Batman left had already resolved Gotham's problems and retired. To stop Zod, Barry had sought out that Batman to free Kara. They had tried again and again and failed. So Barry restarted the world. He put the ketchup back where he found it and returned things to their original shape. But he had cheated. He'd moved all the ketchup that had been on the fourth shelf to the top shelf. When his father later bought ketchup, he looked up. His face was captured on camera, providing an alibi. Barry's father was acquitted and released. The world rebooted, but not exactly the same. Batman was no longer the man Barry had known. Superman had become a brighter, more optimistic hero. Lion remembered all this, and then he remembered what he himself had done in the 1920s. He stopped rubbing his chin. This world, because of his own interference decades earlier, wasn't following any expected script. He could feel Barry's frustration in the air as if it were in his ear. "WTF? What the hell happened to this damn world?" Barry shouted, furious. Lion's mind absorbed why. The history of this universe had fractured and careened away from known events. During World War I, an entire first island chain in the Western Pacific had suddenly been reshaped by a natural disaster. More than half of it sank, and no inhabitants survived. 5 years later, the victors of that war set their sights on the abandoned land and sent troops to claim it. At the same time, an Eastern power that should have been mired in turmoil instead completed a rapid, mysterious unification. They raised a red banner and sent an unstoppable army across the globe, soldiers flying through the air in exoskeleton battlesuits. To stop this rising juggernaut, most Western nations united and launched what became a Second World War. The result was a decisive defeat for the traditional great powers. Eurasia fell under the control of the Eastern power, and the continent joined together as the Eurasian Alliance. Decades passed. Except for the United States, the world's nations came under the alliance's umbrella. The U.S. had briefly joined the alliance and started to revise its ideology, but 10 years ago, Lex Luthor emerged from obscurity and led the country back to independence. Young, charismatic, and ruthless, Luthor was elected president, pushed massive military expansion, and detonated nuclear devices along his own coastline as a show of force. The Alliance, wary of full-scale global war, contained conflicts to border skirmishes, but Atlantis refused to be contained. The surface world kept polluting the oceans and testing nuclear devices at sea. Orm, the new king of Atlantis, saw no choice but to act. He raised the war banner and struck at the continents. The Atlanteans launched a monstrous tsunami along the eastern Pacific coastline, an attack that wiped out hundreds of thousands of lives in the United States. Chapter 324, Kara in the Context of Turmoil. Lex Luthor, a committed human supremacist, accepted the challenge without hesitation. The two sides clashed along the coastline. America deployed Luthor's super soldiers. Atlantis relied on its warriors, who were unrivaled in the water. But Atlantis was not only at war with America, it was at war with the world. The World Red Alliance was drawn in. The Third World War had begun. It dragged on with horrific casualties, and it had not ended even now. When Barry Allen restarted the world and returned home, he didn't get a gentle reunion. Before he could embrace his mother, who had come back to life, or his father, who had not been imprisoned, he was met with screams and the crack of gunfire. In this world, Barry learned the Barry of that timeline had died on the battlefield 2 years earlier. Bad luck had dragged him to the front lines against Atlantis. He became cannon fodder and never came back. He died young, before he had the chance to awaken the Speed Force. The Allens, terrified, mistook the Flash, Barry Allen, for an Atlantean in human guise, which explained the screams and the guns when they met. Kicked out of his house, Barry wandered the streets trying to gather information. His parents had called the police. His face was on wanted posters. He became a ghost in his own city, hiding, scraping by. And with General Zod's arrival, Barry's patience snapped. He shed his usual reserved, introverted manner and raged on the streets of Central City, holding his head and swearing, "God damn it! Sunshine and beaches!" Leon understood everything from Barry's curses and couldn't help but click his tongue. They say a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon could trigger a tornado in Texas. His punch in another history had rerouted the entire world. The plot had become unrecognizable. Red flags bloomed across the globe. Who could tell how deep the changes ran? Even the retired Batman might have been influenced. Everything diverged from the original story. Leon's gaze swept to Siberia, but Kara wasn't there. "I need to find Kara first," he told himself. "If I can't help Clark handle Zod, at least I can help Kara." He concentrated, listening to the world like a man tuning into multiple radios at once. Not long after, he found what he wanted. His face grew odd. In an underground base in Washington, soldiers were arguing about whether the alien they guarded was the same one Zod demanded. Kara wasn't in Siberia, she was in Washington. Leon looked with supervision. Beneath a 40-story building labeled Lex Group, a meticulous network of lid-lined rooms sprawled underground. Any ordinary Kryptonian would have been unable to pierce that shielding, but Leon's vision had evolved. He saw through the lead. Row after row of incubation tanks filled the chambers. Some held naked people in nutrient baths, ventilators hissing. Deepest in the lead-lined sanctuary, he saw a blonde woman in a plain nightgown, skin and bone, her skin shriveled like old bark. There was no fat on her, no nourishment. Her body bore no signs of sexual assault, but fresh needle marks marred her arms. This had to be every corner, bathed the room in simulated red sunlight. She must have rebelled against her captors at some point. They knew her weaknesses and extracted her blood for research, but they didn't risk provoking her into full rage. If she was harmed, the loss would be catastrophic. Kryptonian blood and tissue were treasures to Earth scientists. Leon remembered a comic story where someone accidentally injected Clark's blood and gained powers. Here, Luthor wasn't cloning a Kryptonian, he was using Kryptonian biology to research human evolution. Leon patted the Mark armor and told Jarvis to find a safe place to wait until Tony woke. Then he left the coffee shop. Kara's life had become a hollow loop. Her emerald eyes had gone dull, like bottomless wells. She couldn't remember how long she'd been on Earth. Her memory stalled at the moment her parents injected the life codex into her, put her on the ship, and told her to protect her younger brother on the new world. Krypton had been destroyed. Alone in a vast, indifferent universe, she'd crossed space to reach Earth and found no refuge, only white-robed madmen. She remembered the landing at night. The moment she stepped from the cabin, black muzzles trained on her. Bullets ate her last strength. She was taken to a prison where everyone looked at her with fear and hatred. The planet seemed to hold only malice for her. The last rays of morning sun through an iron window had once restored her strength and let her break free, only to meet more guns and be recaptured, wounds across her body. This time, they locked her in a lightless dungeon. A bald man stared at her as if burning her to ash, calling her the ladder of human evolution. From then on, she became a blood source, daily draws and forced feedings. Under the bald man's direction, the white-robed team experimented constantly. Sometimes they let in a little yellow sunlight to study her powers. Kara resisted. The bald man played a different game. He lied to her, told her she still had family on Earth, and that if she cooperated, he'd reunite her with them. Kara agreed. During experiments, they discovered her vulnerabilities, red sunlight and lead. So they kept her in a lead-lined cell under constant simulated red sun. The bald man vanished from view thereafter. Kara turned into a walking laboratory and a blood machine. Time blurred. She grew from a girl to a young woman. Her height increased from under a meter to about 1.7 meters. The white robes kept count by how many meals she ate. After tens of thousands, the numbers stopped changing, but they still fed her. She no longer bothered to wonder how long she'd been there. After endless solitude and wrestling with a whirl of emotions, she had matured in a way her old life could never have prepared her for. She knew now the bald man had lied. It was possible her brother, Carl, had been implicated because of her. She worried in the way one can only with numb resignation. She had only rituals: eat, sleep, blood draw, basic hygiene. Even the nightgown was the same one from the day she arrived, once trailing to the floor, now barely covering her thighs. She had gone numb. Hope was a foreign language. She moved through the usual meal with detached motions, seat turned to the door, red light washing everything in bloodless tones. A spoonful of food hung halfway to her mouth when the room trembled. It wasn't her. Everything shook. Kara's eyes flickered, then fixed again. In the distance came faint gunshots, roars, and screams. She didn't care. They weren't for her. The sounds grew nearer, clearer, and then cut off like someone flipping a switch. Snap. All the red sunlight vanished. Darkness swallowed the room. Kara's arm froze. Then a shaft of light burst from behind her, carving a door-shaped rectangle through the dark. The lead door swung open, and light poured in, widening as the opening grew. For the first time in who knew how long, the world beyond her cell was visible. Kara felt a strange certainty, death or salvation. The open doorway was like a heaven set ajar. The figure in the light wore a black battlesuit, a cape flowing behind him, and an S emblem on his chest, the same symbol she'd seen in dreams. "Kara," the man said, voice steady, "do you want to go outside and get some sun?" The bowl and spoon clattered from her hands. She reached toward the light, and toward him. Leon helped Kara to her feet, but she only managed a few steps before her legs gave out and she collapsed. He caught her without hesitating. "I'll carry you out." He slid his hands under her armpits and behind her knees and lifted her. She was so thin, she seemed almost skeletal. As he carried her out of the lead-lined cell, the underground base was a macabre maze of bodies. The transparent white corridors were splattered with dark blood. Some corpses lay bisected at the waist, others had faces obliterated. A flicker of cold, vengeful pleasure crossed Kara's dull green eyes at the sight. Leaning against Leon's chest, she could only see the side of his face and the strong line of his jaw. This was the person who had saved her when she was at her most helpless, most numb. She knew it couldn't be the angel Michael. It wasn't her cousin Kal-El either. But to her, it hardly mattered. A small spark kindled in her eyes. Looking at the bodies, her gaze was hollow and icy. Looking at Leon, it was like a dead neon suddenly coming on. She studied him silently, from his profile to his neck to the emblem on his chest, and froze. The S symbol was the same as the one from the Savior in her dreams. For years she had fantasized that Kal-El had never been taken, that her cousin would come to rescue her. Now, seeing the crest up close, she felt baffled rather than elated. In a voice like sandpaper, she managed, "Are you Kal-El?" Her throat was raw from disuse. The sound startled even her. She snapped her mouth shut, like Cinderella caught fleeing a ruined fairy tale. Leon did not seem to mind the harshness of her voice. If anything, he was relieved. It confirmed what he'd suspected. Her condition had been dire. That lead-lined room of red sunlight had been hell. Pulling her out of it was more than a kindness. It was life-saving. He walked steadily, holding her, and answered, Kal-El? I'm not your cousin, Kal-El. I'm from another world. Call me Leon. He added, quietly, I'm afraid your cousin was killed by Zod. Kara shuddered. In this rebooted universe, Superman Kal-El had been intercepted drifting through space and murdered by Zod and his followers. As Kal-El's cousin, Kara had been left to stand against Zod in his stead. Zod was already outside Earth. Leon's plan was simple: get Kara out, then turn the tables on Zod. Her body trembled. When Leon said the first part, he wasn't Kal-El, something in her uncoiled and settled. When he said the second, Kal-El was dead, whatever had settled shattered. Kal dead? Her voice went thin, as if someone had poured ice into her veins. Why would Zod kill Kal-El? How do you know? Kara's hands, weak with exhaustion, clutched Leon's shoulder. Leon didn't tell the full truth. He'd seen the scene in a broadcast, but he kept it simple. Zod is outside Earth. He's searching for what he thinks will rebuild Krypton. He believed that thing was inside your cousin, Leon said. He killed Kal-El trying to extract it. But the life codex isn't in Kal-El, Leon continued. It's in you. That's why he's coming for you. Kara's mouth hung open. For a long moment she was stunned, then anger surfaced beneath the numbness. He killed Kal-El for the life codex? If she'd been bathing in sunlight then, heat vision would have erupted from her eyes. She had no energy left to be ashamed of how thin and ragged she was now. Her green eyes fixed on Leon. Are you telling the truth? The council exiled Zod. How could he have found Kal-El? I have no reason to lie, Leon said. Zod is outside Earth. They reached the base exit where Luthor's forces waited, weapons trained and ready. No hesitation, no regard for the collateral in an urban area. The instant they came into view, muzzles flashed and gunfire erupted down the street. But the bullets never reached them. A faint biofield wrapped around Leon, extending a meter in every direction, and the incoming rounds slammed into that invisible boundary and fell harmlessly away. Then Leon's heat vision cut through the air, and the gunfire ceased as if the guns themselves had been neutralized. Kara stared. Heat vision, are you Kryptonian too? I'm an Earthling, Leon said, with a Kryptonian bloodline. He held her tightly and rose. In moments they had broken through the clouds and climbed into the stratosphere. Sunlight flooded down and struck Kara. She closed her eyes and whispered a small thank you. Under the fierce sun, Kara changed fast. Her shriveled skin plumped and regained color. The blue veins that had stood out beneath her skin drew back into healthier tissue. The blood that had trickled sluggishly through her veins at first began to rush like a spring breaking open. Each cell woke and strengthened. Her face smoothed and became translucent, straw-like. Dry yellow hair regained its sheen. In a few minutes, the broken, ugly figure that had emerged from the cage was gone. In her place was a dazzling young woman, a Kryptonian revived by sunlight. Leon gauged her strength and steered them higher. They passed the stratosphere into the exosphere. The sun grew harsher, more direct. Kara opened her eyes again, her green irises clear and bright, as if she had been reborn. She was about to speak when an overwhelming roar hit her like an avalanche and a tidal wave at once. Sounds from across the world poured into her. Radios, engines, voices, 1,000 competing noises surged into her head. She clutched at her ears and doubled over, pain folding into the new, terrible power flooding her. Chapter 326, Kryptonian Warrior. Leon knew exactly what Kara was dealing with, the painful overload that came when a Kryptonian first awakened superhearing. It was like having hundreds of millions of loudspeakers shoved into your ears at once. No one could bear that. The remedy was simple. Use the superbrain to process the noise and tune out everything but the sounds you wanted. Leon kept holding Kara, gently patting her shoulder. Concentrate, Kara, I said. Ignore the sounds you don't want. Focus on movement around you. Kara clenched her teeth and nodded, following his instructions as best she could. A few minutes later, her tightly furrowed brow eased. She let out a breath, opened her eyes, and looked at Leon with gratitude. Thank you, she said again. Years of solitary imprisonment had made her taciturn. She couldn't summon many words. She tried instead to put as much feeling as she could into her gaze. Leon only saw that she looked well. Her complexion was flushed, her skin like snow, her form lithe. The arm supporting her leg could feel the delicate, resilient give of her skin. The sun's healing was remarkable. Leon couldn't help thinking of his own recovery in the starry sky world when sunlight had restored him. The yellow sun was, for Kryptonians, a power bank everyone praised. "I'm much better now," Kara said. Only then did she seem to realize she was still cradled in Leon's arms. Her cheeks stiffened. "Please, put me down." Her voice was flat. Inside, she felt like a kettle about to boil over. Leon nodded, but didn't release her at once. "Try to fly with your biofield. I'll lower you slowly." Kara agreed. Leon eased his grip, and she floated beside him. For her first flight, she raised her arms and looked at herself in astonishment. After so many Earth years, she had finally awakened under the sun. "Thank you," she said again, the words carrying the most feeling she could muster. "Don't thank me yet," Leon said, thinking of the Life Codex. He took Kara's wrist and flew out through space. "We're going to find Zod and get answers." Kara let him lead her, staring at the large hand around her wrist. Less than an hour had passed since Zod's broadcast had warned Earth. On Earth, Barry Allen stood in Wayne Manor, looking for Bruce Wayne. Tony Stark, now awake and monitoring via Jarvis, was in Metropolis tinkering with his anti-Superman armor, eager to intervene as soon as the Kryptonians arrived. And in space, Leon and Kara tore through the Kryptonian ship's energy shield and outer hull, straight into the command center. A middle-aged man with a short beard, tiger-like eyes, and his hands clasped behind his back, turned from the main seat. General Zod. The other warriors snapped to attention, raising weapons at Leon and Kara. Reinforcements were already rushing toward the command center. "You," Zod barked. "Who are you?" Kara's voice rose without warning. "Zod, what did you do to Kal-El?" Zod's gaze sharpened. "You are Kara Zor-El. How is Kal?" Kara's restraint broke. Kal-El, Superman, was her last living relative in this world, the cousin who had kept her anchored through unbearable years. When she had learned of Kal's supposed death, her emotions had nearly unraveled. Only Leon had steadied her up to now. "We intercepted his escape pod, hoping to extract the Life Codex," Zod said, the words hard and clipped. "But it wasn't in him." "You killed him?" Kara's lips trembled. "The Life Codex is stored in DNA. That child didn't survive the extraction process?" Guilt flickered across Zod's usual cold face, but his tone remained unyielding. "He did not survive. Later, we discovered the Life Codex is within you, Kara. It is the key to Kryptonian rebirth. Your sacrifice would be remembered by all our people." His order was final. "For Krypton, offer your blood. Offer your life, Kara." As the last word left his lips, the veterans in the room powered their energy rifles, the command center filled with the cold glow of weapons ready to fire. Kara snapped. "Kal was a baby when he was sent away. Zod!" She launched like a cannon, a blur of motion, and her boot slammed into Zod's chest with such force it sent him hurtling through the breached bulkhead and out into open space. She chased him, throwing a barrage of punches in the void. The two of them became like colliding meteors. Inside the ship, the sudden decompression sent the other Kryptonians into a brief scramble. They did not immediately pursue outside. Instead, they split. The strongest warriors, those with combat genes like Feora, prepared to launch directly into space to support Zod, while others rushed to their fighters to wing them in from different angles. Before they could act, something dark and liquid oozed from Leon's body. It moved like a living oil and spread through the command center, sealing every cabin. "The hope of Krypton is probably not with you anymore," Leon said quietly from where he'd stood beside Kara. Only then did the warriors notice him. He waved, almost casually, as a farewell. The black substance engulfed the room. In moments, every Kryptonian present was swallowed. The difference in power was enormous. Leon's black light clone absorbed them, decomposing and assimilating dozens of genes at once. Information and genetic patterns flowed into the clone's stores. The gene-level readings rocketed, 90 times, 100, 116. "Not bad," Leon murmured. "Dozens of genes analyzed and understood. That saves me weeks." He retracted the black light clone into his inner world, confirming no Kryptonians remained alive on the ship. With another gesture, he took the vessel itself into his control. "Tony can fix this up," he thought. Leon then flew toward Kara and Zod. The fight had already turned. Zod was a seasoned warrior, and now, having absorbed sunlight, he had surged in strength. Kara was no match for him. General Zod was so powerful he could suppress even Superman, who had been fueled by the sun for over 30 years. Kara, by contrast, had barely bathed in yellow sunlight. 2/3 of her life had been lived under a red sun, feeble and diminished. How could she hope to match Zod? Their strengths were on different orders of magnitude. Even if Kara managed a surprise attack and seized the advantage for a moment, the instant Zod recovered and was exposed to the sun in space, the balance would shift against her. She used speed to compensate. She darted at Zod again and again, each time closing in at blinding pace, throwing punches or front kicks that sent him skidding away. She would break off in an instant, decelerate, and strike again, a living blade slashing through the void. Her whole being had become edged. 10 years of prison, loneliness, weakness, suppression, and rage had forged her into something hard. The sunlight sharpened that edge. She charged forward like a weapon honed to a furious point. But the thing she struck was an even harder shield, and behind that shield, a fist like a falling mountain. Kara was smart. She avoided close-quarters brawling because she was outclassed in raw strength. Yet once Zod adapted, he seized an opening. A punch hit her in the stomach like a thunderclap. She lost the ability to brace, was flung like a rag doll, her old nightgown torn, limbs flailing as if dismantled. Zod didn't hesitate. He flew in like an anti-aircraft gun, intent on a killing blow. Kara carried the life codex in her DNA. With the Kryptonian fleet's current extraction methods, retrieving it would be brutal, cellular destruction that would almost certainly end her life. There was no point in holding back. To Zod, killing her for the sake of Krypton was an honor. The only thing that had ever pricked his conscience was the accidental death of a very young Kal-El long ago. His arm armor folded out a blade, closing the distance. Kara had been unconscious since the blow. She hurtled through space without awareness, an uncomprehending meteor. As Zod's blade descended, a hand suddenly shot up and gripped it. The weapon that could have sliced through Kryptonian flesh didn't so much as nick that hand. It snapped like a reed under a firm, unyielding grip. In the silent void, the crack rang sharp. Zod looked up, stunned. Behind Kara, a man in armor like Kryptonian battle gear hovered, supporting the unconscious girl with his free hand. He exuded something cold and unapproachable. Zod felt a chill run down him, a deathly intent he had met too many times in war. Still, he did not pull back. He clenched his fist and met him, counting on reserve forces, his fleet and elite troops, and knowing this man also had Kara in his sights. Kara was the hope for Krypton's reconstruction. Zod could not afford retreat. The newcomer's grip broke Zod's momentum. He pulled wrist downward, and Zod felt bone snap. A shard of fractured bone tore through skin. Even his battle armor yielded to that casual violence. Before a scream could form, a blow to the temple floored him. He went out. When Kara woke, a massive sun filled her view. "You're awake," the man said. "You were out for a while. You'd been weakened for so long before the fight, then you erupted suddenly and took severe damage. Even bathing in the sun close up won't heal you instantly." She turned her head and saw Leon floating beside her. He had been scanning her with X-ray vision. She reflexively crossed her arms to shield herself, an old instinct that was useless but comforting. Leon immediately averted his eyes. On his other side, Zod floated in silence. The fierce general looked drained and somehow a decade older. His face was unchanged, but the wear had set into him. Kara noticed his right hand bare, without armor, proof that Leon had saved her again. "You saved me again. Thank you," she whispered. Even in space, their voices carried. Leon shook his head, set Kara safely between them, and pushed Zod forward. Under the sun, Zod's injuries had already healed, and he didn't resist now. He had accepted the moment. "Kara," his voice was steady, relentless. "Everything I did was for Krypton. I regret Kal-El's death, but I do not regret what I did. You can kill me, but you must rebuild Krypton. That is your duty. Because you carry the Life Codex, you are one of us, and you must fulfill that duty." Kara said nothing. Zod's words, stripped of context, had truth to them. Unlike Superman, Kara was from Krypton. Rebuilding it was a legitimate hope. But hearing that demand from the man who had wrought so much destruction made her recoil. Her world had been painted in stark blacks and whites by a lifetime of pain. Good was good, bad was bad. No matter how righteous his tone, it felt like poison coming from a corrupt source. Disgust flared in her eyes. Zod saw it. He forced a bitter smile. Who would have thought Krypton's last hope would rest with so young a girl? He shook his head. Remember, he said, and as the words slipped out, the blade in his left arm armor shot free. Leon moved instantly, preparing to block. Then, after a heartbeat of watching the way Zod's arm applied force, he stopped his motion. Chapter 328, Borrowing the Life Codex. When the blade lunged out, Kara instinctively caught Zod's arm. She expected to be crushed by irresistible force, but there was none. The stabbing blade was as light as a feather, sliding back under her push. Zod's arm buckled, the blade twisted, and against all expectation, drove into his own eye and into his brain. No Kryptonian could survive that. Zod froze with wide, unseeing eyes, his life snuffed out in an instant. Kara stood there, stunned, her hand still on his arm, as a cold shock rolled through her. Zod's last words echoed in her mind. You must rebuild Kryptonian. How dear was Krypton to him? So dear that this war criminal, this man who'd murdered and carried out atrocities, would give his life to try to erase the hatred in her heart and to demand she rebuild their people. Kara pushed his body away and watched, blankly, as the corpse drifted toward the sun and slowly burned to ash. The furious resistance that had been coiled in her chest suddenly dissolved. Even an evil man, even a proclaimed war criminal who had killed Carl, could die for a beautiful dream. Here, take this. Leon floated up beside her and handed her a one-piece battlesuit. As for Zod's remains, they burned. The black light clone had already collected his genes, anyway. Kara took the suit. It was the same black design she'd seen on the warriors aboard the Kryptonian ship. You found this on the ship? She asked. I did, Leon said, turning his back so she could change in privacy. I brought it for you. Thank you, Kara said, and quickly slipped into the suit, holding her nightgown in one hand. I'm done. Leon spun back around. The suit clung to her. Its material was resilient and offered decent protection. The gaunt figure she'd had in the lead cell was gone. Now the suit wrapped her in a well-proportioned, heroic silhouette. Leon smiled. You look very good, beautiful even. He added, what will you do now? Stay on Earth? Or get revenge on the one who locked you up before you decide? Kara hesitated, then answered, the man who imprisoned me was bald. I'll find him, but I don't know whether I should stay on Earth. The people I've met here, they haven't all been kind. A bald man? Leon nodded. That's Lex Luthor. He's the president now. If you want to find him, be precise and quick, otherwise it'll get complicated. He shrugged. As for Earthlings, they're a mixed lot. I'm on Earth too, but not from this Earth. You're not from this Earth? Kara repeated, puzzled. No, Leon said. I came from another universe. For what? For the Life Codex. Leon stated it plainly. Kara froze. You want the Life Codex? Is that why you saved me? It's part of it, Leon admitted. But I would have saved you anyway. Why? Because you're Kara. He smiled faintly. I have a Kryptonian friend in my universe. His cousin is also named Kara. Kara felt a strange mixture of gratitude and discomfort. To be saved because of her name made her feel unique, and yet oddly like a substitute. She didn't dwell on it. Why do you need the Life Codex? To rebuild Kryptonians in your universe? Our universe doesn't have Kryptonians, Leon said. The Life Codex is a stepping stone. I need the Kryptonian sequences in that gene bank. Kara's eyes widened. You mean you'll alter your own genes? That could make you into a monster. If a Kryptonian randomly alters their genome, yes, someone could become Doomsday, Leon agreed. He spread his hands. But I'm confident I can avoid that. And if I can't, I can kill myself. Kill yourself? Kara's voice trailed off. Like this. Leon demonstrated. His body began to decompose, scattering into glittering particles before Kara's eyes. Leon! Kara's calm mask shattered into panic. Those particles had been unmistakable. She had seen them with supervision when he'd been pulverized before. For a heartbeat, she believed he was truly gone. Then he reassembled, whole and breathing, standing in front of her again. See? I can commit suicide and come back. No problem. He spread his hands, casual and untroubled. Kara gaped. She'd been convinced he'd been fully destroyed to the molecular level before, and yet here he was, alive. You're actually Rao, aren't you? She blurted, stunned. If Leon nodded and claimed to be the Kryptonian god Rao, she would have believed him. Leon laughed softly. After everything he'd done to pull her out of that lead room, her expression finally cracked, her mouth open in genuine shock. and that mixture of shock and aloof composure made him almost smile. He reached out his hand. I do have a way to control the risks of genetic manipulation. I'm not lying. And when I extract the life codex, he added, I'll do it gently. It won't harm your cells. You only need to lend the codex to me for a while, he said. Afterward, you'll have it back. You can use it to rebuild Kryptonians if you wish. I can even help. Leon considered inwardly what the Blacklight clone's innate abilities included. One of them was a talent for creating life. Once he understood Kryptonian genetics fully, creating a Kryptonian-like Superman wouldn't be impossible. Kara stared at his outstretched hand. She'd been tricked before. Rex had used lies to draw out her weaknesses, and she'd built high defenses against anyone who might exploit her. But facing Leon, those defenses seemed to slip away. Maybe it was because he had saved her so many times. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes when he offered his hand. Maybe it was some other stir of feeling she didn't understand. Whatever it was, she placed her slender palm in his. I'm willing to lend you the life codex. Leon exhaled in relief. That's wonderful. Thank you, Kara. Lending the life codex wasn't like borrowing light from Leja Duo, a simple reset of a timer. To hand over the life codex was to loan a piece of yourself. In the film, Zod's extraction of the codex had killed Kara. Her choice to lend it now was to literally put her life in another's hands. Chapter 329, Luther is Ready. Kara's trust softened Leon more than he expected. He kept thinking that rescuing her from the lead line cell and then helping her get revenge had been the right move. A string of life-saving favors had already lowered most of her defenses toward him. Before, he had even feared she might refuse to hand over the life codex. The codex was too important. For Kryptonians, it was the hope of rebuilding their race. For a mad scientist, it was a treasure that could rule the world. For Kara, it was a decision about her very existence. If he were in her place, he wouldn't lend it either. Even Superman, always compassionate, wouldn't surrender something like that easily. In that sense, Leon's arrival in the Flash's world had perhaps been more fitting than going to the Man of Steel. Thanks isn't enough, Kara said suddenly, squeezing his hand and changing her tone. You have other conditions. Leon raised an eyebrow. Such as? Kara didn't look him in the eye. Calmly, she said, if you take the life codex back to your world to study it, I want to go with you. And if you ever use it like Lex Luthor, I will stop you. Leon studied her a few moments, then teased a little as he interpreted her meaning. Are you saying you don't like this Earth, you don't know where to go in the universe, and I'm the only person you know in the whole world, so you'll just follow me? Kara's placid expression rippled. Her eyes widened. The fingers clutching his hand suddenly tightened so hard he could have left a print on metal. No, it's not like that, she denied after a long pause, but her face didn't give much away. Leon noticed her fair ears flush pink through her hair. All right, he said, thinking she had a little tsundere streak under that stoic exterior. He imagined a pie chart in his head, 80% emotionless, the rest split between tsundere and cute. Kara, oblivious to his thoughts, nodded and let her hair fall to hide the heat in her cheeks. Leon's obvious look made her fingers tremble even as she kept a straight face. Let's go. She pushed away at him, darting toward Earth, but Leon caught her arm. I'll take you back. We're near the sun, over 100 million kilometers from Earth. You're moving, but you're still a bit slow. After sunbathing a while longer, you'll be fine flying on your own. He wrapped them both in a biofield and rode the sunlight down. Kara had trusted him enough to lend the life codex. Leon would repay that trust. The first thing he did on Earth was find Lex Luthor. In this world, Lex had once been a handsome young man with shock of hair. After becoming president, he'd shaved his head. Now his shiny forehead presided over geopolitical chess games with the rest of the world. Rippling alliances and endless strategy had worn him down, and perhaps his hair with it. Now he sat behind the presidential desk with an almost amused indifference, untroubled by Kara's escape or the threat the Kryptonians had posed a day earlier. He rested his hands on the table and smiled a cynical, confident smile that looked less like a statesman's and more like a rich madman's. Leon's eyes flicked around the room and found hundreds of concealed fixtures in the ceiling and walls. They were Luthor's trump cards, hidden red sun projectors. The moment a Kryptonian broke into this room, the lights would bathe them in red sunlight and strip them of their powers. Lex, who knew Kryptonian vulnerabilities, wasn't afraid of human-shaped missiles. He had plans to use the invaders to break the Red Alliance and even Atlantis. As the top strategist of the DC Universe, he'd once goaded Batman nearly to kill Superman. His confidence was boundless. But confidence didn't beat Deus Ex Machina. Leon and Kara appeared in Luthor's dimly lit office with the curtains drawn. Luthor looked up with the same polite smile, unbothered. He stood and offered them a seat, his manner perfectly courteous and rehearsed, as if Kara were merely an old friend visiting, rather than the alien superhuman he had kept imprisoned. He welcomed her with the air of a man who believed he was doing the right thing. Kara didn't accept the performance. She rushed forward, grabbed his collar, and hauled him up so he stared into her face. Luthor showed no sign of panic. "Number 001, he said gently. "The Kryptonians outside are all looking for you. Go back. Go back to your room. Only there can I protect you. Number 001. That was the designation the researchers had given Kara. First it had been 1, then 01, as other subjects arrived. Finally 001. Luthor's voice carried an almost pathetic paternalism, as if he were telling a child he knew what was best. Leon, standing behind Kara, felt a sourness in his gut. If you didn't know Lex Luthor's true nature, his performance was convincing. Watching him now, Leon couldn't help thinking of characters from novels, the calm, friendly face that hid a beast. To Kara, Luthor was Herzog to Arie. The disgust in the room wasn't just Leon's. Kara's eyes flamed red, and she was ready to unleash heat vision. "Lex Luthor," she hissed. "Do you think your honeyed words and fake kindness make up for being a despicable liar and a malicious schemer? Do you think I'll forgive you for what you've done?" Luthor's smile evaporated, but he didn't flinch from the molten red in her gaze. "You've grown up, number 001, he said, almost admiringly. She had been under 10 when they captured her. Now she was in her 20s, sharp and wary. Then Luthor laughed. Not a soft chuckle, but an expansive, roaring laugh. "How interesting," he cried. "Imprisoned alone in a sealed room, bathed in bleak red light, subjected to blood draws for over 10 years, and yet you've stayed rational instead of going mad. Is that what a Kryptonian is? Not just strong in body, but noble in spirit, a true treasure." Chapter 330, Jangwa, blow it up in one breath. Lex Luthor stared at Kara as if she were the greatest treasure on Earth, eyes full of covetousness and fevered fantasies. To him, the woman holding him in the air was not a living being, but a ladder for humanity to climb out of mortality and become gods. He laughed aloud, repeating, "Good, good, good." Kara felt only revulsion. She had no patience left for Luthor. The man had no conscience and deserved hell. She shook her head slowly and said in a low voice, "Go to hell, Lex Luthor." The red glow in her eyes swelled, heat vision edging toward eruption, when Luthor pressed a hidden button in his palm. Mechanical clicks echoed through the room. Artificial lights designed to mimic red sunlight snapped on one by one, bathing the space in crimson. The instant the red sun's illumination fell over her, Kara's poised heat vision died. Her cells weakened instantly to human levels. Her arms lost their strength, and she dropped Luthor's collar in fatigue. Kara staggered back, panic flooding her. She had been foolish. She'd grown since Luthor deceived her as a child, but she still hadn't learned the full complexity of human scheming. Superbrain had only improved her control of the force behind her strikes. Luthor wanted to betray her, and it took almost no thought on his part. Luthor sat on the floor, his smile gone, staring at her coldly. Despair rose in Kara. She was not Leon. She couldn't see how to turn this around. Where was Leon? Leon had come with her for revenge. Had she dragged him into this too? She spun to look. Leon stood not far behind her, looking at Luthor with disgust. He noticed her glance and smirked. "Looks like you need a little help," he said. Kara's heart skipped. Could Leon still do something? Before she could react, he shoved her behind him and then exhaled. The breath that hit the room was like a storm of cosmic energy. Furnishings lifted into the air. The fake red sunlights shattered one after another. Walls tore and peeled away, swept up by the gale. As the lights went out, Kara felt power begin to surge through her again. The wind Leon had generated was so fierce she couldn't open her eyes. When the chaos finally died down, Leon sighed in relief. Deep breaths really do calm you down. I feel much better. Kara poked her head out. The place had once been the White House. Now it was a wasteland. The top layers of the lawn had been stripped away by the hurricane-force gusts, and Lex Luthor, somehow, was still sitting on the floor before them. But he was gone in the only way that matters. Not a drop of blood, not a shred of flesh remained. There was only a skeleton, stripped clean by the wind. Empty eye sockets stared at them. Kara could almost still see Luthor's triumphant smile. Was that what a person looked like after death, their expression and voice frozen in memory? "My apologies," Leon said. "I originally only meant to destroy the lights and leave Luthor to you, but he was so disgusting I couldn't hold back when I exhaled." "No, you saved me again. I should thank you," Kara said, staring at him as if making sure he was real. "Leon, are you really not Rao?" "I already said no," Leon replied, shaking his head. "How am I this powerful? You could even keep your strength under red sunlight. Only Rao would be that strong." "If you ever meet Rao, you can ask him," Leon said with a smile. "Ask what?" Kara asked. "Ask him if he used to be called Leon." With that thought, Leon's Dormammu battlesuit, his combat armor, fell away and became casual clothes. "The area around the White House is destroyed. People will be coming. Let's go." Leon took Kara by the wrist and surged into the sky. Luthor's death didn't just give Kara revenge, it would reshape the global balance and could bring a swift end to the Third World War. Atlantis' war against the continents was driven in part by Luthor. He had even thrown nuclear bombs into the ocean. With Luthor gone, Atlantis had political cover to halt hostilities. Though the ocean warriors were strong, the Red League's enormous fleet of iron armors was formidable. Even now, the League's iron armor tech was only on par with the Super Mark I Leon had developed, but the League had mobilized Earth's resources to produce vast numbers of those suits, many built using palladium. If Tony Stark saw them, he would curse their brazenness and then run. When Leon later found Tony in Metropolis, Tony was rifling through LexCorp data. He grumbled as he looked at the projection. "My God, you actually gave the first armor away? Unbelievable." "What's wrong with that? I don't use armor anyway," Leon said. "What's wrong? The first armor has meaning, okay? Also, I'm looking at the data Jarvis pulled from LexCorp." Tony, didn't you always say rituals didn't matter and the future did? Why the nostalgia now? And why are you poring over this data?" The two of them had a tacit understanding, complaining and exchanging information in a rhythm of their own, like two cats walking the same paw prints across fresh snow. To an outsider, it might look obsessive, but to Leon and Tony, it was routine. "Am I nostalgic?" Tony said, focusing on the screen. "That word belongs to Pepper. Thank you very much." "Leon, look at this genetic data. This Lex Luthor really was a genius, like in the comics." "I remember Pepper treasured your first arc reactor," Leon said. "This genetic data all comes from Luthor's research on Kara's blood. You could use it too." "Wait, I told you to throw out that arc reactor. How did it end up with Pepper?" Tony suddenly stood. "No. Kara? You found Kara? Haha, so we're preparing to fight Kryptonians, right?" "We'll talk about Pepper later." Leon indicated Kara, who was still catching her breath and struggling to keep up with the conversation. "Let me introduce you. This is Kara Zor-El, also known as Supergirl. If you want to fight Kryptonians, we'll talk about that another time," Leon added. "Why another time? I'll protect you, Leon." "I want to try out the anti-Superman armor," Tony said, eager. "Actually, I've already dealt with them," Leon replied. "What?" Tony went pale, feeling betrayed in an instant. Chapter 331. Let's talk about this somewhere else. "I couldn't take you with me. You were still out cold when I left to find Kara," Leon said, teasing. "Besides, you wouldn't want Iron Man to be a burden, right, Tony?" Tony's eyelids twitched. He grudgingly sat back down. "You don't understand your older brother at all, you brat." They were in an open stand of trees outside Metropolis. Tony had brought his gear through the World Ring Leon had given him and set up several armor production lines in the private pocket of that world. Jarvis kept them running. Tony's hands were already busy again. "So what did you actually do?" he asked. "I finally found where Kara was, but I didn't expect you to get there first," Leon said. Tony and Kara had only recently met, and Tony narrowed his eyes at Leon. He swiped his hand across the projection in front of him and pulled up a video. The screen filled with grainy combat footage, a dark sky, then a meteor streaking down and smashing into the courtyard of an estate guarded by mercenaries. Dust rose, commands barked over radios. Someone shouted to protect young Master Rex. When they reached the crater, there was an enormous oval capsule, its materials and construction straight out of a sci-fi film. A mercenary was ordered forward to check. The others leveled their guns. The man tapped the capsule with his rifle butt. With a hiss it opened, and inside sat a small, blonde girl like a statue. She blinked, saw dozens of gun barrels pointed at her, panicked, and bolted like a cheetah. Some guards fired on instinct. Bullets rained in a quick staccato. The footage ended with the girl unconscious on the ground. The shells had only left red marks on her skin, unable to penetrate. Tony closed the video. After Jarvis and I parsed the structure of this world, we concluded it's something like a Flashpoint event, he said. Only in this one, the captive is Supergirl, not Superman. We found variants of this clip in databases from all over, records from 10 to 30 years ago, Leon continued. She landed in the Lex family estate in Kansas. But when we started digging into the Lex family and LexCorp, you showed up and announced you'd found her and handled the problem, Tony finished. Tony rubbed his forehead. Shouldn't Superman have hesitated and let his external superbrain sort things out? Tony, don't blame me. You know how I am. My powers are too convenient. I don't even have to ask questions. Enemies volunteer their plans, Leon replied, as if it were a point of pride. Tony shook his head. Good thing you never joined the Avengers. If you had, Cap and I would have retired 30 years early. Leon smirked. Not quite. From future intel, you actually die in 2023, so it'd be more like retiring 14 years early. Thanks a lot, Tony said, rolling his eyes. Look on the bright side, Leon said. You may not be a frontline powerhouse, but you can help in other ways. In what ways? Tony asked, suddenly wary. Wait, are you asking me for help? Leon made a show of thinking. We first need to define what asking for help means. Tony brightened. Leon was only a step behind him on tech. Even Superman's superbrain had to consult Leon sometimes. Come on, Tony said. It's not shameful to ask your brilliant older brother for help. Leon corrected him. Not asking for help, needing your assistance. You know I need the life codex, Leon said. I explained it before. In this world, the codex is on Kara. Tony propped his chin on his hand. I thought it was on Clark in this universe. Why the change? Leon summarized the state of the world and how he'd rescued Kara. As Tony listened, relief and something like triumphant amusement crossed his face. He raised an eyebrow at Leon with a look that said, Look at you, always attracting women. Leon gave him a wry look back. At least I pick one and stick to her. Tony grinned. Faithful, huh? You mean you focus on the most beautiful group of girls? Kara stood to the side during the exchange, feeling more and more like she was the subject of some private, embarrassing conversation. What are you two doing? She asked. They both snapped their gaze away. We're discussing how to safely extract the life codex from you, Leon lied smoothly. By communicating with your eyes? Kara said, suspicious. That's how scientists work, Tony said, suddenly serious. Inspiration comes from eye contact. So, do you have a plan? Kara asked. The room felt awkward, like a childhood secret discovered. Strictly speaking, yes. Tony tapped the console. The multiple projection screens went dark. He folded away the table, chairs, and equipment. Then he tapped the arc reactor at his chest, and his armor assembled around him in a cascade of metal. My plan is we leave now. You just murdered, no, forcibly killed, the president in the White House in Metropolis, Kara blurted, incredulous. And now you're calmly chatting with me on the outskirts of the city? Tony looked a little speechless, then fired up his thrusters. Are you too bored? Want to cause trouble and then have a whole country retaliate? If we don't move, we'll just waste time. With that, he shot up into the sky. Leon and Kara exchanged a look and a resigned shrug. He's right, Leon said. Let's go. Follow him. Kara pushed off the ground and floated after Tony. Where are we going? She asked. Watching Tony's flight path as he climbed, Leon answered, Judging by his route, Gotham. Leon had always thought of Gotham as a city of sin, a place soaked in decadence, where misty nights hid murderous intent and mad laughter. Calling it Gotham was almost redundant. You could as well call it Batman, Two-Face, Penguin, Joker. Those names were the city's labels. Dark, chaotic, greedy, insane. In a normal DC universe, if Leon walked the streets in his battlesuit at night, some clown with ridiculous makeup might sidle up and ask, "Why so serious?" Or a Batmobile might slide to a stop and the Dark Knight would step out and ask, "Do you bleed?" But in this rebooted universe, Gotham felt alive and peaceful. Even the sewers seemed to hum with calm. From the highest hotel suite they could find, Tony and Leon watched the city glow. Cars on the overpasses looked like a river of fireflies. "After 3 days here, I still can't believe this is Gotham," Tony said, a little deflated. "The Batman here is Michael Keaton's. He doesn't have a no-kill rule." Keaton's Batman from Batman and Batman Returns actually existed in this merged reality. Tony had watched the films before they came. What's strange about that? When the Flash gets involved, anything's possible. Leon shrugged. "Besides, you wanted to use Gotham's chaos as cover. It's not chaotic, but we haven't been discovered." Goal accomplished. 3 days had passed. The Kryptonian in space had vanished. People on Earth were anxious, but the immediate threat had gone, and life went on. Lex Luthor's death had forced the U.S. into negotiations with Atlantis. Luthor's killer was being hunted worldwide, but the manhunt lacked intensity. Leon and the others had stayed in Gotham 3 days without anyone accusing them. Work on safely extracting the Life Codex from Kara was progressing steadily, though Tony complained about boredom. "I actually wanted to meet Batman," Tony muttered, eyes on the glittering skyline. "I plan to round up the Jokers, Killer Croc types, deal with them all, then drop them at Bruce Wayne's feet," he smiled. "Then I'd tell him his no-kill rule is nonsense, that he's just a lunatic pretending criminals are pets." "But look at this city," Tony went on. "Keaton's Batman wouldn't cling to a no-kill rule, and all the Jokers and Penguins are long dead." Leon hadn't expected Tony to be so relaxed. Even in a crossover universe, he had to go bait Batman. "You're being idle. Can't you use this time to work on the Life Codex extraction? Think, Tony, get a flash of inspiration and solve it." Tony stuck out his lower lip. "Inspiration needs a foundation. Why don't you let your super brain come up with something? You've had 3 days to build the framework. Is that slow?" "It's still slow," Leon shot back. "You can't compare to Reed. Reed builds stuff overnight. You wait for a eureka moment while you frown and brood." "That's comics, Reed. In the comics, I've got a wisdom gem implanted in my head, too." They traded barbs while watching the city. The extraction had to be done without harming Kara, so they couldn't rush. Then, with a soft knock, Kara entered. "Someone's here," she said. "They say they're Batman and Flash." A beat of silence. Then Tony's face lit up. In the living room of the suite, a clock ticked above the fireplace. 2 visitors sat opposite Leon, Tony, and Kara. One was an older man with white hair, but a surprising vigor. He lounged with one hand on the back of the leather sofa, a touch disheveled, his gaze drifting but alert, like someone ready to pounce at the slightest sign of trouble. The other was a young, reserved man. He sat with his hands clasped between his knees, shoulders slightly hunched, smiling at awkward intervals with a nervous, earnest friendliness. "So," Leon said, breaking the silence, "why are you here?" "Okay, so, we've come to deal with the Kryptonian," the young man blurted, then rushed on as if relieved to have started. "Bruce's Batcave. Bruce Wayne is Batman." He jabbed a thumb toward the older man, eager. "There's super brain tech in the Batcave. We hacked networks in a bunch of countries, and we found out you killed Luthor." He raised his hands in a conciliatory panic. "Of course, we're not going to turn you in. We want to rebuild the Justice League with you and fight the Kryptonian. We have to unite." "We should rebuild the Justice League?" Leon and Tony exchanged looks. "Yes, I came from the future. I know a lot of things. This is important." The young man pointed at Leon. "You're Clark Kent, Kal-El, you're Superman." He jabbed at Kara and Tony next. "You're Wonder Woman and Cyborg, Diana and Victor." The 3 of them leaned back a little. The young man clasped his hands, eyes shining with conviction. "Listen," he said, "I ran back in time using the Speed Force to save my mother. The world changed. I don't know why you haven't started operating as superheroes yet, but we have to unite to fight the Kryptonian. If we don't, they'll destroy Earth. Also, this time Bruce won't target you, Clark. You won't die, so Steppenwolf won't come here. Earth can stay peaceful forever." He pumped a fist. "Even though the world's a bit different and your appearances have changed, we can avoid a lot of tragedies this time." What you're saying makes sense, Barry, Leon said, listening but thoughtful. Except the Kryptonian was already dealt with, by Kara and me. And my name isn't Clark. The Clark you're thinking of is already dead. Barry froze, eyes wide, confusion flooding his face. Chapter 333, Extraction of the Code of Life. Stepping out of the hotel, Barry Allen was slapped in the face by the cold night wind. He still hadn't recovered. His thoughts were a chaotic tangle, like they'd been run through a blender. He walked forward on autopilot, muttering the same phrases over and over. Clark's cousin, Superman from another universe, Iron Man from Marvel, Wonder Woman is still on the island, Cyborg's still a football player, Aquaman hasn't been born, Batman's an old man, and Superman is dead. What have I done? Under the dim street lamp, Barry's disoriented form made Bruce think of himself decades ago, the night he lost his parents in a Gotham alley. The older Bruce Wayne watched Barry for a long moment, hands in his pockets, then asked suddenly, "In your future, am I Batman?" Barry's murmuring stopped. He nodded, blank and slow. He had asked Batman that question many times before at Wayne Manor. In the past, Bruce had seemed indifferent. Now, for some reason, he asked it again. "Also Batman. Maybe it's Bruce Wayne's destiny," Bruce whispered. His original reason for becoming Batman had been to avenge his parents, but it had grown into a war against all of Gotham's darkness. Perhaps the other Bruce Wayne had faced the same fate. Perhaps he, too, was always meant to become Batman and always meant to lose his parents that night. "Barry, you went back in time to save your mother, so your parents are still alive, right?" Bruce asked casually. Barry didn't know why Bruce wanted to know that, but he answered honestly. "That day, Mom asked Dad to go to the supermarket to buy ketchup. She was killed by someone who broke into the house. Dad came back too late and was treated as a suspect, no alibi. I wanted to change that." Bruce cut him off. "I didn't ask you why you changed the past." He sounded bored with excuses. "I asked if they're alive." "Yes," Barry said simply. "They're alive." "That's good," Bruce said. "It's already obvious your changes altered the world. Whatever else it's caused, go back to your family first. Don't spend all your time standing around doing nothing." He opened the door of his Lamborghini and slid into the driver's seat. "Cherish your family. You know none of this came easily." Bruce started the engine and was about to drive off when Barry followed him, opened the car door, and climbed in. He lowered his head. "I can't go anywhere." "What do you mean?" Bruce asked, turning to him. "The me of this timeline is dead. I went home, but they think I'm an Atlantean in disguise." A helpless shadow crossed Bruce Wayne's usually impassive face. Barry really had been unlucky. "You can tell them the truth," Bruce said. "Tell them who you are and what you've risked." "But, no buts." Bruce's voice was firm. "Atlantis has ceased fire. Go back and reunite with your parents. Explain everything. Sit down and have dinner with them tomorrow. Get out of the car now." He drove Barry out. Bruce's last words drifted away with the engine's roar. "Don't come looking for me unless it's important." Then he left. The closest person Barry had in this world was gone home. Everyone had a home, Bruce included, alone in his house like Barry was alone in his. Barry had nowhere to go except as Bruce had told him. The Kryptonian threat had receded, and the rumble of a third world war was dying down. Barry stood under the streetlight, fingers clenching and unclenching, and after a long struggle, he made a decision. "Batman's right. I've already caused so much. I can't just stand by. I'm going back to them." He looked up, leaned into the Speed Force, and vanished from Gotham like a streak of lightning. On the hotel's top floor, the three others watched Bruce and Barry leave. Tony shook his head. "It's a good thing we don't have something like the Speed Force in our universe. Too dangerous." He thought for a moment. "The fastest person here's probably Quicksilver, but even he can't hit light speed. There's no way to reset a world." Leon smiled wryly. "Marvel didn't have a Speed Force, but it had Infinity Stones, and Wanda's chaos magic could rewrite reality just as badly. Each universe had its own horrors. Neither could afford to look down on the other." "Stop worrying," Leon said. "Barry should be able to explain things to his parents. The world's stable for now. We need to get the extraction equipment ready." A few days later, the Life Codex extraction equipment was finished. Kara lay on an operating table that was neither hard nor soft, steady and clinical. Leon and Tony, wearing white protective suits, prepared to begin, with Jarvis monitoring everything. A cabinet-like machine stood beside the table, its paneled surface opening to reveal several articulated arms. Each arm ended not in a scalpel, but in a device like a tiny spotlight. The arms hovered and traced lines of scanning light across Kara, probing the condition of her cells. "Jarvis has calculated the extraction force for every cell," Tony said. "We can begin." Leon looked down at Kara. "Tony and I have tested your blood dozens of times. Don't worry, there won't be any accidents. Just relax." Kara blinked and smiled faintly. She trusted Leon and felt calm. When the procedure started, the scanning lights went out and the arms began emitting invisible shockwaves. The waves passed through Kara, that oscillating at a precise frequency to separate the life codex from her DNA. Traditional Kryptonian extraction devices required direct penetration into the body, but the equipment Leon and Tony built was exponentially gentler. As the oscillations intensified, each of Kara's cells began releasing tiny motes of light. The motes rose from her like bubbles to the surface of water, a steady rain of golden flecks. At first they were faint, but as billions more emerged, a thin golden film spread over Kara's skin. Leon guided the motes with the machine's field so the light flowed together, reconverging outside her body into a single ball of radiance. When the last mote left Kara and joined the sphere, the golden glow snuffed out as if a candle had been blown. In its place, something darker took form, a pitch-black skull suspended just above Kara's head. "Is this the life codex?" Kara asked. She had never seen its true form either. Leon reached out and pulled the skull toward him. "That's it, the life codex." He stared at the bone in his hand, entranced. It wasn't the skull's look that gripped him, but the information locked inside. With a single sweep of his superbrain, the countless particles etched on the skull's surface resolved into their most basic forms. Tens of thousands of Kryptonian genetic templates, engineer templates, politician templates, meteorologist templates, warrior templates. Krypton had bred for generations using fixed templates. Infants were designed from birth to end up in a specific place in society. It sounded cruel, and in many ways it was, but right then, Leon was grateful for that cruelty. One glance gave him access to tens of thousands of genes. The entire codex must hold trillions of templates. His superbrain hungrily began to deduce, cross-reference, and optimize his own genome against them. He started running experiments. A cascade of DNA arrangements flashed through his mind. The chains in every cell of his body disassembled and reassembled again and again. Under the horrified eyes of Kara and Tony, Leon convulsed. Flesh burst and reknit, blood spurted, clumps of muscle ruptured and reformed. He looked possessed, mutating through grotesque phases as if some eldritch force had him. "Jesus, Leon, what are you doing? Stop! Stop it now!" Tony's scalp prickled. He felt as if this might be the moment his brother left his last words about Pepper. Kara tumbled off the operating table, fear written across her face. She hadn't felt any pain when the life codex was extracted. Rather, the shockwaves had buzzed through her like 1,000 hands massaging her cells. But now, Leon's condition terrified her. Something was wrong with the codex, she thought. Her pupils narrowed, and her superbrain jerked her gaze to Tony. He was an external processing node. Could he help? Is there any way to help him? His genes are collapsing. Kara's voice was urgent. Cold sweat dotted Tony's brow. "Let me think. Calm down. Is this fatal?" Kara's breathing steadied when she remembered how Leon had resurrected before. Relief eased her most taut nerve. How long will this last? No normal person could endure this. Leon's body shredded and rebuilt hundreds of times. After more than 10 minutes, the cycle finally slowed. He stopped becoming a bloody ruin, stabilized into human form, and the last flakes of gore and tissue clung and fell away. Thanks to the self-gene-locking ability from the biohazard world, anything that left his body lost the useful genetic information automatically, so he didn't have to worry about leaks. Tony and Kara still looked shaken, but Leon's face broke into a grin, practically vibrating with excitement. 1,001 times. He crowed. He had adjusted his genes against the racial templates in the codex, trillions of deductions, hundreds of experiments, and his genetic level had risen from 1,000 to 1,001. If he could keep evolving at this pace, perfection was within reach. "Ha, Tony, I did it!" Leon laughed. The mission in the DC universe had succeeded, and the results were beyond his expectations. If the floor weren't still slick with blood, he joked, he might take Kara's hand and dance like a couple of old-time heroes. Tony, panting and furious from sheer worry, pointed an accusing finger. What do you mean, you did it? You idiot! Do you realize what you put us through? Leon saw the fear in Tony's face and Kara's concern and knew how reckless his experiment had been. He didn't apologize. Instead, he thumped his chest. You know I regenerate. That was just a bit of wear and tear. No need to freak out. Before Tony could explode again, Leon added, besides, worrying won't change anything. This is how I'll do gene research now. If my genome collapses thousands of times a day, I'll just get used to it. Tony was left with nothing to say. Angry, helpless. Next time you're going to tear yourself apart, could you at least give us a heads up? You trying to scare me into giving up my corner of Stark Industries? Tony snapped his fingers as he spoke. Leon, don't call yourself Superman. Call yourself Deathseeker Boy. You die several times a day. Don't make me watch. I can't take it. It's really, damn it, I'm going to rest. Don't call me unless it's important. He ripped off his white protective suit and slammed the lab door behind him. Leon shrugged at the remaining silence and walked back to Kara. Tony's been up to his ears in research. Let him sleep. Kara stepped closer and studied him carefully. And you're going to rest? You just died. Many times. Are you sure you're okay? Really, Leon said. I'm fine. He held up the skull, but I'm going to need the life codex for longer. The information in it is priceless. Kara looked at the bone, and for a moment her gaze seemed to reach back through time to the ruined world that had made it. She nodded softly. Give it back when you're done. Having just watched Leon grow stronger because of it, she no longer feared that he would misuse the codex. Still, she planned to stay close. Leon had told her before that, in this universe, she had no family left. Earth had left scars. Strangers crowded every corner. Leon, another exile from a different world, was the only person she trusted. The loneliness of being surrounded by a bright, bustling world while feeling left outside of it had been a constant ache. Only beside Leon did she feel someone cared for her, someone she could care for in return. All right, she said. Keep it safe. When you're stronger, help me rebuild Krypton. Leon sketched a quick, hopeful smile. I will. I'll bring Krypton back. Kara believed him. I'll wait for that day. For a split second, Leon had a strange thought. Kara reminded him of Jarvis, loyal, unquestioning, always ready to follow. But it wasn't that Kara was his servant. It was that her trust in him was sky high, so absolute that when she looked at him with those honest, almost childlike eyes, even the emptiest promise made him feel guilty. He averted his gaze, peeled off his white protective suit, and opened the door. Then it's settled. Let's go. Time for us to leave. Outside smelled of disinfectant and street lamps. They were still inside one of Tony's world rings. After the fight with Dormammu, Leon had had a pair of those rings made for Tony and Pepper. The world inside the ring was tiny and sunless, a wild stretch of vegetation and minerals where Tony had carved out a secret base. It had full battlesuit production lines, plenty of entertainment, and complete medical and research facilities. Kara's surgery had been done in a sterile room here. Leon stepped out and scanned the area, confirming Tony had already left the miniature world. People generally couldn't or didn't want to stay here. Without a sun, all light and power came from Tony's arc reactors. The place had a bleak, Victorian industrial feel. He could hear the distant rumble of assembly lines. Only Jarvis's sub-entities lingered here to build suits for Tony. Leon himself was impatient to leave. No sunlight grated on him, which was annoying for a fake Kryptonian. Kara reached out and took his wrist. At her touch, the industrial complex dissolved. The scene shifted into the luxurious hotel room in Gotham. Sunlight slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, and summer cicadas screamed outside. An impossible, peaceful afternoon in Gotham. Kara, it's still daytime. Go explore. Even though you've been on Earth for years, you haven't really seen local life. Gotham won't disappoint. Leon stretched at the window, the life codex warm in his hands, making him oddly content. Everything looked brighter, even Gotham seemed gilded. Kara watched him from behind. I will. You going to rest like Tony? I don't need to, Leon grinned. The word rest belongs to mortals like Tony. For us Kryptonians, basking in the sun is enough. He winked. Kara nodded, eyes fluttering between him and the skyline like a child spotting an ice cream shop. Leon laughed and tapped his forehead. Sorry, I probably can't go shopping with you today. I've got a 90-year appointment to keep. Kara looked surprised. An appointment? Didn't you and Tony get here only a week ago? Tony had already filled Kara in on Leon, partly teasing, partly parental concern over his brother's tendency to chase trouble. That had made Kara curious about how Leon could possibly have an appointment in this world. It's an appointment, a promise made 90 years ago, Leon said lightly, then waved and moved toward the door. I'm leaving now. You go shopping. And be careful. If you run into bad guys, don't hit too hard. He was gone before the sentence finished. If Kara had known the appointment was with Diana, she would have insisted on coming. Leon didn't plan to take Kara to see Diana. He didn't like hiding things, but Diana had waited 90 years. Bringing another woman to that reunion would be thoughtless. Over the Black Sea on Paradise Island, the sun was sinking into the water. The island's trees shivered in the breeze, their leaves burning orange and red in the dying light. Diana sat on the cliff's edge, staring at the horizon, her heart echoing the waves that smashed on the rocks below and then drew back. Diana, it's getting dark. Come in. Dinner's ready. Queen Hippolyta stood a few paces behind her. You all go ahead, Mother. I'll be back in a bit, Diana called without turning, picking up a pebble and sending it skittering across the sea. The stone carved a brief arc over the water before the waves smoothed the wake away. I'll sit a little longer. Maybe Leon will come today, Diana said, uncertain. Hippolyta sighed. You still won't let it go. You wait here every day for that Leon. Maybe he's forgotten. For ordinary people, 90 years is a lifetime. He won't. Diana puffed out her cheeks and threw a pebble like a torpedo. He said he would jump forward in time. The moment just hasn't come yet. She believed it with all her heart. The waiting had woven anticipation and bitterness together. 90 years meant nothing in the span of her centuries, yet these particular 9 decades had been everything. Days and nights spent hoping he would appear, wrap her in his arms, and take her into the world of men. But still he had not returned. Chapter 336, Paradise Island is hot. Time changes many things. Diana still remembered Leon's face as if it were burned into her memory. She remembered the smile he wore the day Ares died, the way he walked up to her and told her that everyone had survived. She missed him fiercely. After learning the stories about Zeus and her mother, she finally understood that she had fallen in love with Leon. But 90 years of separation was a long time, long enough for him to become almost a shadow in her heart. When she woke in the morning, that shadow would be there. Watching the sun set over the ocean, she would think of him. Even the cry of gulls on the cliff would make her stand and wonder whether Leon had arrived. Without Hippolyta saying anything, Diana knew something was wrong with her. Sometimes she even caught herself imagining that she should have tied Leon to the headboard with the lasso of truth so she could see him every morning when she woke. The thought horrified her at once. No rope could bind someone like Leon. Yet it still revealed how desperate she felt. Leon, across the world, had no idea she entertained such notions. If he did, he would probably be terrified and half convinced she'd turned into a dangerous, obsessive beauty. Hippolyta had heard Diana say, Leon will come, 1,000 times. She could only sit on the cliff beside her daughter and watch the golden light fracture into 1,000 diamond flecks across the sea. If you won't go, then I'll wait with you, she said. She sighed. You and I were much the same once. I waited for Zeus here too, but he had Hera, Themis, Eris, so many who vied for his favor. How could he remember that on a remote island an Amazon queen was thinking of him? Diana, don't pin too much on a hope for Leon, Hippolyta warned gently. Hope turned to obsession will make you lose yourself. Men rarely remember feelings they left behind. They treat women like things to be set aside. But those who can be shaken off are simply those who stopped pursuing, who let go. Hippolyta stroked Diana's hair. I gave up. Besides, Zeus is dead. Whether mortal or divine, you must learn to release what you cannot hold. You have so much life ahead of you, Diana. Don't trap yourself. Her words were sincere and reasonable. They struck home and made Diana a little sullen. Hippolyta meant well, and she truly believed that daily reasoned counsel would eventually ease Diana's heart. She was already rehearsing what she would say tomorrow, anticipating Diana's rebuttals and figuring how to answer them. Then Diana's scream split the evening air. Ah! It was a scream of surprise and panic, unusual for the woman who had faced gods and warlords and never cried out like that since Ares fell. Diana! Hippolyta's heart clenched, and she leaned over the cliff in alarm. Before she could fully see what had happened, Diana was already being hauled back up. Hippolyta's face went blank. Diana was in Leon's arms. He had arrived on Paradise Island at some unknown hour and had caught her mid-jump. He carried her in a bridal hold, wearing the same casual clothes she remembered from 90 years ago. Diana clung to his neck. Their heads were close, twisting together as if they could melt into one another. Hippolyta could only see the back of Diana's hair, but the posture and the sounds left no doubt about what was happening. She glared at Leon, at the audacity of him returning when even Zeus had not. "You scoundrel," she muttered fiercely, then looked helplessly at her daughter. Watching them reunite so fiercely after such a long absence hurt and, in a way, eased her heart. She picked up her long sword and walked into the island's interior without a backward glance, leaving the two of them to their moment. Leon had never known a kiss like that. It was not only the fulfillment of 90 years of longing, but urgent, almost violent in its intensity, like a wave trying to drag everything in. The kiss seemed to suck the air from his lungs. If he had been an ordinary man, or even only a newly awakened super with strange, otherworldly blood, he might have been left gasping. Diana was inexperienced but overwhelmingly passionate, pouring decades of yearning into the contact until she seemed intent on drawing every bit of Leon into herself. When the sky finally went black and the last afterglow faded, Diana broke away, panting. She looked at him with tender eyes that seemed to have melted a world. "I knew you'd come back," she said. Leon brushed a stray lock of hair from her face with a finger. "That was our agreement," he replied simply. Diana hummed and smiled, never able to stare enough at him. Then, with a flash of hurt and playful reproach, she struck him hard on the chest. The blow would have flattened a lesser man. Leon only rubbed his ribs and feigned agony. "Ow! That hurts, Diana." Ever impulsive, Diana immediately dropped into contrition. I didn't mean to. Are you okay?" As she leaned forward, Leon suddenly became a wolf of mischief. He pinched her and then pinned her to the ground. Diana blinked at him, breathless and amused. "The ground's cold. Leon, what are you going to do now? Make a baby? Shape a clay statue?" Is this how it's done?" Leon asked, mock serious. "We don't look the same," Diana said, half teasing, half puzzled. They kept laughing and pushing, a private storm that took over the cliff. Paradise Island felt very hot that night, hot with reunited longing and the flush of something dangerously new. Far off, the sea lay quiet and a little surreal. The shoals of fish stirred by Diana's earlier jump floated stunned on the surface like a strange omen. All night the island trembled slightly, as if old wounds and younger passions were rearranging it from within. Chapter 337, Her Majesty the Queen is on the lookout. Below him was soft earth, above him floated white clouds. Superpowered people didn't need bedding. For once, Leon relaxed and slept through the night. His consciousness remained active through his two avatars in his inner world, but his main body slept, wrapped around Diana. When the morning breeze came, Leon's eyelids fluttered, and he woke. Diana was right there. In the pale morning light, she curled against him like a peeled lychee, a faint halo around her. Dew clung to the tips of her hair, which fell across her face and exposed rosy cheeks and slightly parted, flushed lips. Her warm breath drifted onto Leon, and the morning chill vanished. Of course, Leon himself wasn't cold. The chill came from the distant hill where Hippolyta watched with an icy stare. That look had been fixed on them for a long time. It was impressive that Her Majesty had managed to wait through the entire night without storming down to demand an explanation. Even the other Amazons, who had rushed over out of curiosity or alarm, had been stopped by the Queen. The earth-shattering commotion the night before had panicked everyone. Some feared the island would collapse. Only when Hippolyta, face grave, pronounced it a normal phenomenon did they calm down, though they still kept uneasy watch. Only Her Majesty knew the truth. Her precious daughter had been taken advantage of, like a prized cabbage trampled by a wild boar. The image made Hippolyta both furious and incredulous. Was this the kind of uproar even Zeus had ever caused? Whatever happened, she wasn't going to let Leon get away with it lightly. After the tremor, Hippolyta had rushed to the epicenter at once. A single glance left her darker than thunder. Diana had truly been abducted by the wrong sort of abductor, and Leon, cavorting there without even finding a room, seemed to think Paradise Island was his personal den. She had wanted to leap in and pull them apart, but the scene had already become too heated. Instead, she had turned back, vexed, and slept fitfully. Before she could sink into deep sleep, she heard warriors arguing about searching the island for the cause of the quake. She rose, dismissed everyone, and silently took her place on the hill to stand guard over her daughter. It was, in her mind, an unbearable indignity. When Leon woke to her stare, he used his superhearing to quickly map the island's movements and understood the situation. He wiped his nose awkwardly, slipped clothes over Diana, and let the Dormammu suit reform around himself in the guise of casual clothing. Is it morning already, Leon? Diana murmured, folding out from his arms. The clothes Leon put on her slipped. She shook her hair free, revealing wheat-toned skin and the pink flush across her breasts. Leon leaned in and brushed a kiss to the corner of her mouth, then helped her dress. The leather armor he handed her was hers. He hadn't torn it. He'd simply used spatial rules to slice the bonds apart, the tightest wraps sliding away as easily as chocolate. Your mother has been waiting for us a long time. Let's go. Don't make her angrier than she already is, Leon said quietly. Right. Diana snapped awake. The mention of her mother sobered her on the spot. She tugged on her combat boots, sheathed her long sword, took Leon's hand, and sprinted toward the island's interior. Let's get back to my room quickly. If Mother finds out we spent the night by the cliff, we're doomed. Diana's legs powered her like a practiced warrior of Qigong, 10-meter strides that ate the distance. Leon kept pace beside her and realized Diana was still a little lightheaded. Otherwise, she wouldn't have tried to cover it up. Hippolyta was waiting, and Diana knew it. Love made people foolish, he thought. Last night they'd confessed for real. Diana was now truly his. She was the kind of woman no money could buy off. They burst into the densely clustered housing area and found most of the island's residents gathered outside, talking in small groups. Diana crouched down, hoping to slip back to her room unnoticed, but the warriors' voices carried. What exactly happened last night? The tremor on Paradise Island lasted more than 3 hours. It felt like the bedrock was being hammered. I can't figure it out. The sea around here has been calm for thousands of years. Was someone attacking? But His Majesty said it was normal. If everything is normal, why did the ground shake like that? It felt like someone was pounding the foundation. What foundation could take that? Impossible. As Diana listened, her face burned. Their sisters were seriously concerned, and the reason for the commotion was entirely their own doing. Unlike Leon, who could move and apply force with perfect control, Diana had given herself up completely last night. Every motion had landed like the strike of a spatial weapon. Previously, he'd enjoyed strange comforts with others. Ada and Jill had once become a vice and a furnace, but this time it was Diana as a space-based weapon, and the pleasure was on another level. Leon decided, half to himself, that he had to train her, refine her. In the worlds of Marvel and DC, there had to be ways to evolve her powers, space-based armaments, thermobaric strikes, weather manipulation. Maybe she could integrate them all and become the ultimate weapon. Leon. Diana grabbed his hand hard, cheeks flushed. Last night we were too loud, she whispered. I know, he answered. You knew? Her eyes widened. Then why didn't you stop me? Someone could have found out. It's okay. Leon waved her worry away. He hadn't even used his biofield to conceal the island while they were enthusiastic, but the damage was limited. Besides a cratered patch of ground and a 10-meter sink where they'd been, nothing else was wrong. Her Majesty stopped everyone else last night, he said. This morning she even stood guard over us. We're fine. Chapter 338, Leaving Paradise Island. Oh, Mother helped keep watch? That's good. What? My mother. She. Diana sprang to her feet, so startled she could scarcely form words. She jabbed a finger toward Hippolyta's sleeping quarters, her cheeks flaming. Diana had never been afraid of her mother. She rebelled more than she obeyed. But the idea that Hippolyta might have seen her behavior from the night before, might even have been keeping watch, filled her with a mortifying shame. The world felt suddenly too small to hold her. The Amazons nearby, drawn by her outburst, turned to look. They had no idea Diana had been the cause of last night's quake. Concerned voices rose around her, asking what had happened. Diana stammered, flustered beyond measure, and the urge to knock down the nearest support beam and bury herself under rubble flashed absurdly through her mind. "Diana!" A stern voice cut across the commotion. Queen Hippolyta had returned. She rode in on her war horse, whip in hand, and the surrounding warriors instinctively gave way. The queen seemed unusually severe today. She looked down at her daughter. "Come with me." Hippolyta rode past and shot a glare at Leon, who was crouched behind Diana. "And you, Leon, come as well." Only then did the Amazons notice him. Their focus had been entirely on Diana. They hadn't expected to see this man again after 90 years. Surprise and delight spread across their faces. "It's actually Leon? Leon's back on Paradise Island? My word, he's still so young. Could he be a god?" "Leon, do you remember me? You saved me from Ares decades ago." Leon rose at the queen's summons, and the warriors' curiosity became rapture. Among a ring of tall, lithe warriors in brassieres and skirts, he stood out like a fish out of water. For these women, who had not seen a man on the island for generations, his presence was unforgettable. Some remembered the image of him on the cliff from long ago, sun and sea behind him. Even a few decades, to them, felt fresh enough to etch into memory. The excitement quickly drowned out talk of the earthquake. The boldest of the Amazons lifted 2 fingers to her lips and whistled. Leon offered nothing but a polite, contained smile. He had learned how to handle crowds of admiring women. He'd been on the receiving end of far wilder attention in meetings with groups that were, as he thought wryly, the female equivalent of hooligans. When swarms of adoration gather, anything you say can be twisted, so the safest response was often silence and a steady smile. That usually kept things from spiraling, especially once more level-headed leaders stepped in. "Who's whistling?" Diana demanded, worry and possessiveness flaring as she planted herself between Leon and the Amazons. "What are you doing? Don't crowd him. You'll scare him off. Disperse! Disperse! Weren't you supposed to investigate the earthquake? Hurry up!" She shooed at her sisters like a mother hen, desperate to keep them away. When words did little against dozens of eager gazes, Diana resorted to theatrics. She pinched Leon's chest and lifted her head, claiming him with a proud, possessive air. Then, embarrassed at her own boldness, she took his hand and pulled him toward Hippolyta. "Leon, move. Mother will scold us if we're slow." Hippolyta became the perfect excuse. The two hurried after the queen and into the temple, leaving a circle of sighing Amazons behind. "We usually eat together," one warrior murmured. "Wouldn't it be wonderful if the consort could be shared by all of us?" A chorus of rueful agreement followed. Inside the main hall, Diana had barely steadied herself when the weight of Hippolyta's presence pressed down again. "Mother," she said softly. Hippolyta turned, a sheathed sword in her hand. The blade's runes glinted, and the hilt was carved with opposing dragon heads. Diana recognized it instantly. "The God-Killer's sword," she breathed. "Wasn't that locked in the tower? Mother, why have you taken it out?" Instinctively, Diana moved to shield Leon. No way, she thought. Her mother wouldn't actually behead Leon to make a point. The idea of drifting across the sea in a small boat holding Leon's head was absurd and sickening. Hippolyta saw the look on her daughter's face, and with it, the private panic behind it. She was equal parts stern and resigned. "I know I cannot keep you here, Diana. 90 years ago, you stayed for me and for the warriors on this island," she continued. "This time you are leaving." Diana nodded. "Leon will take me to the human world. I will come back, Mother." Hippolyta's expression softened and hardened in turns. "You are still too innocent about humans. They are not always worthy of your trust." She had seen too many of humanity's shadows. Diana opened her mouth to respond that she understood, that she would be careful, but words from the day before, Hippolyta's warnings about men, even Zeus, had failed to stick in her daughter's head. The queen sighed inwardly and looked to Leon. "You will protect Diana, won't you, Leon?" Leon nodded, but made no promises. Hippolyta didn't seem to expect a vow. Good. She stepped closer and placed the god-killer sword in Diana's hands. There is much I could say, but you are no longer a child. Take this Amazon artifact and go. Do what you believe is right. Diana accepted the long sword. Ares had once said the god-killer couldn't kill gods, but that didn't make it any less formidable. It was still a true weapon of the Amazons, a weight both in her hand and in her life. Hippolyta gave the practical instructions she always did. Gather what you need. Show Leon the island. Let him see where you grew up. Let him know there is a powerful army here should he mistreat you. They walked the island together. Diana spoke of her childhood as if passing on treasure. Every tree, every path had a story. She showed him the places that had shaped her, and by nightfall they had shared dinner with the Amazons. In the course of the evening, Hippolyta formally recognized Leon's place at Diana's side and granted him free passage to and from Paradise Island. Finally, with blessings, warnings, and a sword in her hand, Diana left the island with Leon. They turned toward the human world, the night closing behind them on a place that had raised a princess and would always be waiting for her return. Chapter 14. The princess leaving the castle, carrying Diana, Leon flew across the Atlantic toward Gotham. Layers of cloud rushed past beneath them as they chased the sun. The sun over the Black Sea had already slipped below the horizon, but the farther west they went, the sky brightened again. Dark clouds were slowly painted by sunlight, deep blue, orange-yellow, reddish-orange, pale bluish-white, until finally the world seemed almost pure white. They burst out of the cloud bank. Diana laughed, threw out her arms, and let the long wind rush through her hair. It had been a long time since Leon had flown this slowly. He guided them through the clouds at only a few dozen, glacial compared to his usual habit of opening a portal and arriving instantly or moving at light speed to be anywhere on Earth in a blink. This flight with Diana felt deliberate and gentle, like walking a girl back to her dormitory and taking the long way home on purpose. Leon held her hand, wrapped her in his biofield, and together they reached out to touch the drifting cloud banks. The clouds changed color with the sun's angle, painting a scene so magnificent both of them were silent for a moment. Diana's eyes shone. Though she had awakened her divine power years ago, she had never really learned to fly, only to feel the clouds from below. Now the clouds were within reach. She ran her hand through the vapor and felt it slip like silk between her fingers. Then, delighted, she cast out her truth lasso and bound a puff of cloud. What had been loose aggregations of water droplets and ice crystals drew together like cotton candy under the lasso and formed a soft, floating ball in her hands. The cloud shifted colors as the sun moved, Diana's face lit with pure surprise and joy. "So this is what clouds are like," she said. "It's amazing, Leon." "It's incredible," Leon replied, watching the little cloud in her palms. "But your truth lasso is the real wonder. It can bind something that isn't solid." "That's divine power," Diana said, shaking the lasso and watching the cloud swing. "Divine power can do many things, not just fight." "Then why don't you try flying with your divine power? Ares did when he came to Paradise Island," Leon suggested. "I've never really tried," Diana admitted. "Can I? Really?" "You can. I'll teach you. First, you need to get used to weightlessness, feel what it's like to be held up by the air. We'll go into the clouds and practice slowly." Leon looked at Diana like a curious child, and a mischievous idea crossed his mind. He took her hand and they plunged into the thick cloud layer. Diana's expression was puzzled and bright with expectation. She didn't know what Leon planned. But a moment later, the sea of cloud around them began to ripple. A deep, rhythmic sound rolled through the vapor like distant thunder. Hours passed. The cloud training lasted only long enough to show Diana the sensation of buoyancy. It did not turn her into a flyer. She didn't fail from lack of effort. She simply needed more practice. 1 or 2 attempts would not be enough. This would be a long, patient task. When Leon no longer delayed, he gripped Diana's small hand and flashed them above Gotham. "Is this Gotham?" Diana asked, hanging limply in his arms. Her body was pleasantly sore from the day's exertions, but her face shone with wonder as she craned to look down. The endless flow of traffic, the skyscrapers that clawed toward the clouds, everything below was new to her. Paradise Island's population had always been small, Every Amazon knew every other Amazon by habit and preference. Compared to that, the city below seemed like an entire world poured into a single canvas. People streamed along the streets, dense and anonymous, passing one another, yet meeting each other's faces for the first time. Leon eased them down so she could take it all in. Even tired, Diana's eyes were bright. Even Gotham's gray skyline grew colorful to her. She angled her head to admire Wayne Tower, its reflective glass shimmering, and then looked toward the large, elegant Robinson Park. She felt like a fairy tale princess stepping out of her castle for the first time, all innocence and astonishment. "Is this the human world?" she breathed. "So this is what it's like." She had been exclaiming the whole way. Now, quieter from exhaustion, she still managed to lean up and kiss Leon on the cheek. "Will the place we live later be like this?" "Not exactly," Leon said after a moment. "It'll be livelier." Compared to this Gotham, which had been tamed and controlled in many ways, New York would be more chaotic and vibrant. He was just thinking that when movement in the sky caught his eye, someone was flying toward them. At first he thought it might be trouble, then he recognized the figure. Kara. She hovered in front of them and folded her arms. "You've been missing all day. Tony's been looking for you. He hasn't slept." Kara hadn't gone off to explore or shop, as Leon had suggested. After he left, she had simply sat in his usual spot by the hotel's floor-to-ceiling window and basked in the sun all afternoon. Even after the sun set, she refused to move. Warmth in the world meant little to her now that the only person she cared about was Leon. When she told Tony that his brother had gone missing, Tony waved it off. "He's probably off chasing some pretty girl," he'd said, and the casual dismissal made Kara furious in a way she didn't expect. She decided then that Tony was an unreliable brother. Even Jarvis, the artificial intelligence Leon had mentioned, had been trying to help, invading satellites across nations to search, but so far it had turned up nothing. Kara judged Jarvis to be just a little worse than Kryptonian tech. Chapter 340. Zhang Daju, Huzi Kara, was anxious in a way she couldn't explain. Late at night, with Leon still not back, a restlessness gnawed at her. It felt like 1,000 rabbits were thumping around in her chest, scrambling and digging into every corner. She told herself Leon was missing, but she didn't truly believe someone as formidable as him could be in real danger. Still, she kept looking for an excuse to have Tony and Jarvis find him. Her mind wouldn't stop conjuring possibilities. Who could keep Leon out all night? Was there anyone in this world who could make him stay away when for the past week he hadn't even left the suite they shared, the thin wall between their rooms, the only barrier? Her mind, so precise and relentless, like a supercomputer, spat out one clear scenario after another, each with its own vivid image. There was the image Tony had thrown out, Leon rushing to another city to meet another woman. There was the image of Leon exposed to red sunlight, his powers gone, captured. There was, darkest of all, the image of him abandoning Kara and Tony in the hotel and leaving this universe alone. Kara couldn't sleep. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window all through the night, watching the horizon for a silhouette that didn't come. Dawn finally slanted its light through the glass and warmed her skin, but still she saw nothing. As the sun climbed, her shadow slid from behind her to beneath her, and irritation rose like heat under her ribs. She felt the urge to tear apart the sofa and pull out handfuls of strange impulse that had never visited her, even during the decades of incarceration or on Krypton. She felt confused, agitated, ashamed of the smallness of feeling. The images in her head made the moment sharper than when Luther had her imprisoned. She told herself it was only worry for Leon. He was the only person she knew in this world, the one who had saved her many times. She still owed him for the life codex she had lent him. She had not yet repaid the favor. It was reasonable to be anxious, she thought, but the vexation didn't subside. It burned steadily, like a fire beneath her ribs. She used her super hearing and supervision to strain as far as she could. Half the movements on Earth came into her awareness. Cars, trains, crowds, but not Leon. She wanted to leave the hotel and look for him. A whole day had passed. Tony, however, remained unconcerned and unruffled. Jarvis still couldn't infiltrate whatever line of data Kara needed. The two of them, useless as far as she was concerned, insisted she stay. If she went out, she would be noticed by every agency on the planet. So she waited, pacing the window all morning, the taps of her shoes on the floor counting the minutes. By afternoon, the tapping had become a steady rhythm, almost like a drumbeat. Just as Kara felt about to lose control, Leon finally appeared in her vision. For a split second, all the anxiety vaporized, gone as if a hard drive had been wiped and a fresh joy reloaded. Then the joy collapsed. Leon was not alone. He had a woman in his arms. The girl had dark curly hair, large, bright eyes, and skin so fine Kara's supervision registered every pore. She was laughing, smiling with the kind of happiness Kara remembered feeling on the first night in Gotham. The happiness that had not shown itself as a smile on Kara's face, but had been there all the same. Back then, Leon had linked his arm with hers. Now he linked his arm with this woman. They floated down over Gotham, the girl pressing a kiss to Leon's cheek. Kara had never seen such public affection among Kryptonians. On Krypton, people did not kiss like that. Only Earthlings did. And she had seen a few couples kissing in Gotham over the last days, strangers cheering them on, others watching enviously. There was a thing here called love, and people who loved each other showed it that way. The realization hit Kara like glass breaking in her chest. The sound rang clear from heart to ear. Hot sunlight poured down, and without thinking, Kara pushed the window open. The glass shattered outward, and she flew after them. Heat shimmered the air into blurs, strange that even her supervision seemed warped by the heat. She cut through the distortions and hovered before them. Leon looked at her. The girl looked at her. Kara didn't know why she had come, didn't know what words would come out. She was not an Earthling. She wasn't even sure what love was supposed to feel like. She was simply someone Leon had saved. Tears slid down her cheeks anyway. "Kara," she said finally, voice tight, "why were you gone for a whole day?" Tony was worried and didn't sleep. Leon stared at the wet trails on her face. "Kara, why are you crying?" he asked, pointing. Were they kidding? Kara thought. She had been gone for a day. He had returned with another woman, and his first reaction was to talk about her tears. Kara met his gaze stubbornly, expression practiced and calm, but the tears kept flowing. Leon faltered, searching for words. What would Tony do here? Tony would hand over a check with a theatrical flourish and tell the girl not to cry, promising grander adventures ahead. But this wasn't that sort of scene. Leon had no idea why Kara reacted like this, and he certainly hadn't intended to hurt her. Still, the sight of her crying was awkward. Before he could find an excuse, Diana reached out from Leon's arms. "Is your name Kara? Don't cry," she said, her voice all bright concern. "What did this bad man do to you? Tell me, and we'll yell at him together." Diana wiped Kara's cheek with a gentleness that made Leon wince. Unlike Kara, who was still raw and inexperienced with emotions, Diana carried decades of stories from her mother about scoundrels, the main villain always Zeus in those tales. Diana saw the scene for what it appeared to be, a hurt woman, a guilty man. She couldn't tell whether she was playing Hera or Hippolyta in this little drama, but she knew what to do. She spun a glare at Leon and realized, with sudden amused conviction, that her mother had been right. Men were often just big slabs of pig meat.